Hi, welcome to another episode of Hot Takes. Right at the beginning of the year, the Scottish Government finally relented. They saw that there was a problem. They had to face it. They couldn't hide the problem anymore, the problem being housing. And so they reluctantly admitted that there was a housing crisis in Scotland, but then tried to spin it as a good thing. They tried to say, well, now that we've admitted it's a crisis and we'll send a housing crisis across the whole of Scotland, this will free up money and allow decisions to be made much more quickly without having to go through so many committees and things. That was the plan. Of course, this come hot on the heels of Humza Yousaf and his £200 million cut to social housing. Not a good auspicious start when you've got a housing emergency to cut 200 million from the budget. But he had to, because after all, that independence isn't going to waste money on its own, is it? Needs a lot of help. And so they cut this budget. And they said, oh, but we make those decisions. And what decisions have they made? Well, none. And so the result is we're sitting here now in September, a mere 9 months after the emergency, the crisis, this terrible catastrophe that's befalling Scotland was first acknowledged. And fewer houses than ever are being built. Now, fewer houses, of course, in community housing, in social housing, low cost, low rent, that sort of thing, that helps people who are actually homeless or, in deep need of appropriate housing, sure. But actually, all housing, house building generally has fallen through the floor, and I'm afraid to say, yours truly, me, predicted it would. Because I said it would happen. And I gave the reasons why. I said the fact that planning has been made much more difficult, that there's much higher standards for houses in terms of their environmental impacts. I said, and mainly the big one is the forcing of house builders to put in heat pumps that nobody wants. And so house builders are building houses with heat pumps that nobody wants. Nobody's buying these houses. And then they're sitting there with all their capital tied up in houses that they cannot sell. Or at least they cannot sell and make a profit. They can sell them, but they're going to take a loss, and companies don't do that. So they hold it on the books as unsold capital and keep the books healthy rather than selling it for a loss and making their company go under. And that's what happens. And because of it, nobody is investing in the house building and construction side. Nobody's investing in Scotland. So as well as social houses not being built because the Brains Trust cut 200 million from the social building budget, normal houses aren't being built because the green policies are destructive to house building. Well done. Well done, SNP. What a bunch of absolute geniuses you truly are. On top of that, Elgin house builder Morlick Homes has just gone into receivership. It's been liquidated. How does a house builder fail? Well, it fails because it can't quite easily move south of the border. Not when you're stuck up there on the Moray Firth. It's a long way down, isn't it? It's a beautiful part of the country, mind. But, if you can't sell the houses because, well, we have to build them with heat pumps now and nobody's buying them, what do? It's not easy for someone like that to move 300 miles south and start building in England. If you're someone in the borders, it's a lot easier, isn't it? And that's what's happened. So Morlick have gone. And with them, jobs, opportunity, the subcontractors, the tradies, they'll go. They've still got skills. They'll have to move. So they'll sell their house probably for a loss, flooding the market as they all move south back to England, earn their money in England, not pay as much tax, even fewer builders in Scotland. And so this spiral down the plug hole continues. The plug hole of doom as far as construction in Scotland will continue. And construction is a major part of an economy. But there we are. That's the SNP for you. But it gets even worse because, well, of course it does. It is the SNP. You don't think that the bad news stops there. No, the bad news continues because it's also been announced that homelessness in Scotland, which was already at record levels, is breaking records again. It's increasing again. And it's now breaking all sorts of records for the numbers of people who are homeless or in inappropriate or temporary accommodation. And it is an absolute scandal. They have done, through their policies, every single thing to create this problem. This is not a problem that's happened. It's a problem that they have created. And not just with the insistence of putting heat pumps into new homes. No, siree, Bob. You've got to look at things like no fault evictions being banned. You've got to look at increasing the bureaucracy for landlords. You've got to look at rent controls and not allowing people to put rents up. And through a long period, not allowing people to evict people. Everything they do, throwing out landlords, rights and freedoms. And so what do the landlords do? Well, they sell up and go. Consequently, no private landlords, and nobody's building, homes for community or social housing. Where do these people live? Cardboard boxes under a bridge? You'll be lucky. First of all, you've got to get a decent box. And secondly, you've got to buy a decent or get under a decent bridge. And there ain't that many. This is a policy of failure. It is many policies of failure by different departments. But it seems to be they've all coalesced and they're working together to create a homelessness problem in Scotland that defies all logic. It is way beyond what it should be. And it's easily fixable. But to fix it, the SNP would have to admit they make mistakes. And we all know that they never make mistakes. They never get anything wrong. What's truly sad is that the ages of homelessness are at stark contrasts. The elderly are now becoming increasingly homeless because pensions can't meet what they need. The cost of heating a home, and for pensioners that's much more important, is too high. They run out of money, they run out of funds, they're poverty stricken, and then boom, Mr. Rent, they're out. And where do they go? There's nowhere for them. Literally nowhere. And so you're going to have this almost Victorian scandal of old people dying in the streets, freezing. This is where the SNP has got Scotland in the 21st century. Old people freezing to death in the streets. And children living in hostels with who knows what for neighbours. No safety for children and dead old people in the streets. I hope the SNP are rightfully proud of themselves, proud of their record, proud of their policies. Because you can't blame Westminster for this. It wasn't Westminster who put in rent controls. It wasn't Westminster who forced heat pumps into new houses. This was all the SNP and their backward policies. Thank you very much. Let me know what you think. Till next time, goodbye.